The next day he persuaded May to escape for a walk in the park after luncheon. As was the custom in old-fashioned Episcopalian New York, she usually accompanied her parents to church on Sunday afternoons, but Mrs. Welland condoned her truancy, having that very morning won her over to the necessity of a long engagement, with time to prepare a ham-broidered trousseau containing the proper number of dozens. The day was delectable. The bare vaulting of trees along the moor was sealed with lapis lazuli, and arched above snow that shone like splintered crystals. It was the weather to call out May's radiance, and she burned like a young maple in the frost. Archer was proud of the glances turned on her, and the simple joy of possessorship cleared away his underlying perplexities. "It's so delicious, waking every morning to smell lilies of the valley in one's room," she said. "Yesterday they came late. I hadn't time in the morning. But your remembering each day to send them makes me love them so much more than if you'd given a standing order, and they came every morning on the minute, like one's music teacher, as I know Gertrude Lafertz did, for instance, when she and Lawrence were engaged." "Ah, they would," laughed Archer, amused at her keenness. He looked sideways at her fruit-like cheek and felt rich and secure enough to add, "When I sent your lilies yesterday afternoon, I saw some rather gorgeous yellow roses and packed them off to Madame Olenska. Was that right?" "How dear of you! Anything of that kind delights her. It's odd she didn't mention it. She lunched with us today and spoke of Mr. Beaufort's having sent her wonderful orchids, and Cousin Henry van der Leyden a whole hamper of carnations from Skyttercliff. She seems so surprised to receive flowers. Don't people send them in Europe? She thinks it's such a pretty custom." "Oh well, no wonder mine were overshadowed by Beaufort's," said Archer irritably. Then he remembered that he had not put a card with the roses, and was vexed at having spoken of them. He wanted to say, "I called on your cousin yesterday," but hesitated. If Madame Olenska had not spoken of his visit, it might seem awkward that he should. Yet not to do so gave the affair an air of mystery that he disliked. To shake off the question, he began to talk of their own plans, their future, and Mrs. Welland's insistence on a long engagement. "If you call it long. Isabel Chivers and Reggie were engaged for 2 years, Grace and Thorley for nearly a year and a half. Why, aren't we very well off as we are?" It was the traditional maidenly interrogation, and he felt ashamed of himself for finding it singularly childish. No doubt she simply echoed what was said for her, but she was nearing her 22nd birthday, and he wondered at what age nice women began to speak for themselves. "Never, if we won't let them, I suppose," he mused, and recalled his mad outburst to Mr. Sillerton Jackson. "Women ought to be as free as we are." It would presently be his task to take the bandage from this young woman's eyes and bid her look forth on the world. But how many generations of the women who had gone to her making had descended bandaged to the family vault? He shivered a little, remembering some of the new ideas in his scientific books, and the much-cited instance of the Kentucky cavefish, which had ceased to develop eyes because they had no use for them. What if, when he had bidden May Welland to open hers, they could only look out blankly at blankness? We might be much better off. We might be altogether together. We might travel. Her face lit up. That would be lovely, she owned. She would love to travel. But her mother would not understand their wanting to do things so differently. As if the mere differently didn't account for it, the wooer insisted. "Newland, you're so original," she exulted. His heart sank. He saw that he was saying all the things that young men in the same situation were expected to say, and that she was making the answers that instinct and tradition taught her to make, even to the point of calling him original. "Original? We're all as like as each other as those dolls cut out of the same folded paper. We're like patterns stenciled on a wall. Can't you and I strike out for ourselves, May?" He had stopped and faced her in the excitement of their discussion, and her eyes rested on him with a bright, unclouded admiration. "Mercy, shall we elope?" she laughed. "If you would. You do love me, Newland. I'm so happy. But then, why not be happier? We can't behave like people in novels, though, can we? Why not? Why not? Why not?" She looked a little bored by his insistence. She knew very well that they couldn't, but it was troublesome to have to produce a reason. "Oh, I'm not clever enough to argue with you, but that kind of thing is rather vulgar, isn't it?" she suggested, relieved to have hit on a word that would assuredly extinguish the whole subject. "Are you so much afraid, then, of being vulgar?"